be able to listen to it a second time.
Well, and that's perfect because I had intended to record it tonight anyway. So I just
Oh,
went ahead
good.
and turned that on. Uh, and I think we'll just go ahead and get started. Still some people joining, but that's okay. They can hop in and get caught up. I think that'll be easy enough. And I am going to mute everybody. And just to let you know, we will stop and do questions throughout. So if you do have questions as we go, feel free to put those in the chat. And then every so often, I'll stop and Valerie will help us get caught up on the chat questions. So if there's anything that you're wondering as we go, you can just put that over there and we'll stop and catch those up every once in a while. So, like I said, this is intended to speak to beginner level natal chart enthusiasts. So, AstroBeginners, this is only the second time that I'm doing it, and the last one was really, really fun. We went like really deep into a couple of the basics. And this time we are going to look at each of the 12 zodiac archetypes. So, I'm gonna turn off my space heater. Uh, so each of us have all of the 12 zodiac energies. All 12 energies are in the sky all the time, and each of us is a unique combination of all 12 energies. So as we go through this, my goal is to talk about each energy and the gifts that it possesses, also talking a little bit into the challenges of that energy and some of the darker aspects of it. So that's the plan, to go through each individual energy. Before I get into the presentation, though, I do want to take just a second and introduce myself. So my name is Carly Wharton, and I started learning astrology in July of 2020. So that means it's been less than a year, and I am basically the epitome of self-taught. I Google and I read and I pass everything through my own BS meter, and I find what resonates and kind of fill in the rest with my intuition. And that's basically what we're looking at here tonight. So as you pass all of this through your BS meter, if you want to Google and do your own research and, fill in around what I'm giving you or take it in a completely different direction, you're not going to hurt my feelings at all. I highly recommend kind of feeling through it for yourself. Because I don't even know how you would get certified in astrology. I'm just going to throw that out there. I got a Google certification. I know how to write the right words into Google and learn some stuff, which I highly recommend. You can learn so much for free on Google. So yeah, that is, well, actually, I am going to start here too, because this session tonight is really meant to be informative. So we're going to go through each of the 12 zodiac energies, and I'm going to talk about them. Like I said, drop questions in the chat, and that'll be the session tonight. Tomorrow, and really every Wednesday, I do host a free mini reading session where you can get a free 5 to 10 minute reading on your specific natal chart. So if you're interested in that, obviously tomorrow's Wednesday. So Val, if you could put a link to this event in the chat, feel free to RSVP for that. I just need your chart details ahead of time, and I'm happy to read for you on Wednesday morning. Other than that, I do full readings. Through my website, you can book a full individual reading with me. So that link will be floating around the chat as well if you're interested in that. Otherwise, my passion is really to connect you with this information, because again, you can learn so much on Google just by typing in, what about Sagittarius energy? What about my Mercury in Virgo? You can type in very simple things and learn a lot yourself. So yeah, I like to teach the basics. That being said, tonight's session is going to focus on the 12 zodiac archetypes. My main takeaway, so if you take one thing home from this session, I hope it would be that we are all 12 energies. We might each prioritize those energies differently. Some of us might really like to use our Gemini energy. Some of us really like to use our Virgo energy. Doesn't really matter. We all have all 12 of them. And that being said, there's a light side and a dark side to each energy. So depending on our vibration, depending on how full our cup is which side of that energy are we flowing. So, you know, there are definitely different zodiac signs out there that get a really bad reputation. They are you know, they just are maybe misunderstood signs of the zodiac. But a lot of times that's because people have witnessed that energy on the dark side of that energy, and they were hurt by someone who was on the dark side of that energy. But that doesn't mean that that energy is to blame. It's more our individual vibration. And when we're hurting, sometimes we inflict pain on others. But when we're rested and we're secure and we have our inner source of energy at our disposal, we can portray the light side of those energies. So really, not one individual zodiac is to blame for somebody who has offended you or wronged you in the past. Tonight, as we go through each of these, I would invite you to kind of look at that and see if you can find each of these energies somewhere inside of yourself. I would imagine, just based on my own process of doing that, that some of those are easier to find inside of yourself than others. But that's, you know, that's where the fun of it is. So, okay, so where we're going to start is with the first zodiac sign, and that is Aries. If you really, I mean, Aries starts, it's the beginning of spring. So it's like not coordinated with January 1st. And if you really want to know more about that, you can look into the history of time and calendars. And it's a fascinating story as far as like, why is Aries the first zodiac and yet the year starts in January? That's a whole background all by itself. A whole other conversation, not meant for AstroBeginners. But that is to say, this is showing us that that Aries sign is right here in this particular natal chart. Now, your natal chart is going to have Aries maybe at a different spot, depending on where Aries is in your chart. So that's just to show, you know, each of us has that individual energy. And then from there, the signs are always in the same order. So it always goes Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and then when you find Aries in your chart, it'll always go around from there. So for this one, Aries is in the 12th house, like just as an example, these little triangle chunks, those are the houses, and the numbers on the inside, that is the number of that house. So for this person, Aries is in the 12th house. Not overly important for this session, just so you can see in your own natal chart, where is that Aries energy and all of the energies beyond that. Before I get into Aries, Val, do we have any questions so far? I've seen a couple things in the chat.
No, not yet.
Oh.
Yeah, I do. I don't see what image you're referring to. It seems like you're looking at something or perhaps sharing your screen, but I don't see anything.
Val, do you see my screen?
Yeah. Are you on a phone maybe?
Yeah, I am, but typically I always see this screen sharing.
Yeah.
I can stop it and restart it and see
No,
that.
no. It may be me. Perhaps I just need to exit and then come back in or sign in through my laptop, which is what I'm going to do right now.
Can you see it
there we
now?
go. Yes,
Okay.
now I
Okay.
can.
Yeah, no worries. That's all good. Okay, so this is the natal chart. And in this example, Aries is right here. So that means Aries is here in the 12th house, and then Taurus, Gemini, and on around the circle from there. Okay. So again, we will start with Aries. Aries is the I am sign, also represented by the ram. It is the cardinal fire sign. So fire is its element, and cardinal means that it is the sign that starts one of the seasons. So all of the cardinal signs are the beginning of each season. All the fixed signs are the middle of each season. All the mutable signs are the end of each season. So cardinal fire is the start of spring. Now, the dates, as far as what constitutes an Aries, I put double asterisks around the dates because depending on where you look and how modern your information is and who you're listening to, the dates around what signs are what is a highly debatable topic in astrology, and one of the many debatable topics in astrology. So the dates that I have here are basically what I would call like more the traditional dates. Depending on where you're looking, again, that might be a little bit different, but the energy of Aries is the energy of Aries. So regardless of how you choose to define the dates around each sign, the signs themselves are what they are. And so that's what we're really focusing on. So if you have a set of dates that make sense to you and they don't match mine, that's totally cool. And that's not really the part that we're getting at here. Because the main thing that I want to focus on for each sign is the gifts of that energy and then the challenges or the shadow side of that energy. So Aries being a fire sign and a cardinal sign, the beginning of those seasons, cardinal signs in general, they are very good at starting things. They're the start of each season, so it kind of makes sense. So the gifts of Aries, they are passionate. They get really excited about their ideas. And because of that, they have the confidence to kind of go for it, to just jump off a cliff and start a new project and tell everybody about their bold new idea and be really courageous in believing that they can accomplish what they set out to accomplish. So that is a really beautiful energy when you think about like wanting to move society forward, wanting to achieve continuous improvement, wanting to have the courage to try new things and not just always be stuck in the status quo. So that Aries energy, it really, I mean, just like coming from winter to spring, it's that new growth of, we've been dormant long enough. Let's go. Let's get out there and express ourselves and run after what we want and not be scared of how are we going to do every single step along the way. Aries is not concerned about how we do every step along the way. They're more like, let's go. This is exciting. I really want to achieve this and I believe that I can. So that's a really, really great energy. Like all fire signs, the flip side of that energy, the shadow side of that fiery boldness is that you can literally like a fire breathing dragon, you can scorch people with that fire. So short-tempered, impulsive, aggressively assertive, very, very, very firm and assertive in their ideas. And because of that, closed off to others' ideas. So you can see this energy, it's a well-rounded energy. They all are. And depending on the user's vibration is going to be, are we seeing the light side of this energy or are we seeing the shadow side of this energy? Like if somebody's really secure and really confident and their cup is full and they have a healthy sense of who they are, they're coming off as passionate, they're coming off as excited, but they're not forcing people to go along with their ideas. Like if somebody's insecure and like has that Aries energy, but coming from more of a shadow side, it's like wanting to force other people to listen, wanting to force other people to get excited about their projects and like yanking them along and demanding that people support them. So it just really depends on the user's vibration. And I think it doesn't even have to be something where, okay, I'm only the light side of Aries now. No, probably not. Like probably day to day, situation to situation, there are going to be times where our vibration is up and down and we go back and forth between the light side and the dark side of these energies. I know I can recognize myself being both of them in some situations, like even just one situation, you can kind of flip back and forth between how to really channel the highest frequency of that energy. Before I move on from Aries, were there any questions on that first sign? No?
I have a comment.
Sure.
I have a comment. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm an Aries, and I found everything to be true about what you said. I've done some research on astrology, but one thing I want to say is I'm actually on the dark side right now. Right now, I'm actually like on the dark side of being an Aries. and it's amazing how like I have to I'm so passionate about what I do, you know, and about my ideas and like jumping, taking that faith to leap and stuff, that I have to take medicine, right? That I have to take like medicine to calm me down. And it's crazy because everybody has been telling me, yo, you need to get back on your meds, dude. Like, but believe it or not, like it's something about the dark side of the it's something about the dark side of the quality of being an Aries that makes you feel powerful, but people don't like that. And so I don't know. This gave me a lot to think about because I'm wondering like, should I stay in this dark side or should I start back taking my meds and be back on the lighter side of things?
Mm.
That's it.
Well, yeah, no, and you brought up a good point that I think Aries in general is a really powerful sign. I think whether you're on the light side or the shadow side. And when you're on the light side, that power can be leveraged for good things and can inspire people to follow you towards these bright ideas that you're so excited about. They can get excited too. But when you're on the shadow side, that power, it rubs people the wrong way. You come off as overbearing. People feel like you're trying to force them into it instead of them feeling inspired to follow you. So, you know, the light side is more about glowing with your passion from the inside out and other people being attracted to that versus the shadow side of Aries is like demanding to be heard and demanding to be followed. And we can't lead by force. That just like as a leadership principle, it just doesn't work. So I don't know anything about your meds. I'm not a professional. You got to do professional. But I would say, you know, the shadow side of any energy that carries, the shadow side can feel safe. It can feel like we're insulated from exposing ourselves and potentially being judged or seen. Like it really does take strength to step into the light side of these energies. So, you know, don't feel like, oh, okay, I need to get on the light side. Like it's a whole process, like to move back and forth on this spectrum.
Right. Last thing, and then y'all can continue. So like I also realized that it's always about this same time of year, right before my birthday is coming up, that I get this way. Like it's always about this time of year. Like I was looking, I don't I well, so I have a journal that I was writing stuff down around this time of year last year. And I was like, wow, I'm kind of experiencing those same things. It's like it really does have like its own little cycles and stuff. So that's all I want to say.
Agreed. So our birthday is known as our solar return. It's when the sun goes all the way around the zodiac and comes back to where it was on the day that we were born. And so like all the planets are returning, they're making laps and coming back to where they are in our natal chart. But the sun is a big one. Like energetically, for the sun to be back where it was when we were born, like it's an energy boost that can be really powerful. Again, if your vibration is clear and you're ready to be propelled forward. If your vibration is muddy at all and you get to that solar return, you get that energy boost, but there's all these blocks in the way. And that can feel really like frustrating. Like you're full of all this energy and you can't flow it the way that you want to. So again, this light side, dark side concept, it all comes back to your overall vibration and how high is that? How clear is it? How, you know, how positive is it on a day-to-day basis? And that's something that can be worked on. It's something that can be molded over time to lean in a more positive direction. So the fact that you're even thinking about these things, I think is productive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dionysus, did you have something?
Yes, I typically do. My sun is in Gemini and Mercury is in Gemini, so I typically often have a comment to make about every single thing. But I will refrain. But with regard to this, I totally agree. I think, yeah, the solar return, the sun in astrology, I think it relates or corresponds to the principles of exhibition. And thus, whenever we have our solar return, we find that, you know, our sense of confidence more than likely will be invigorated and accentuated. So yeah, nevertheless, I agree with you there. But what I was gonna ask was, what, I guess, I know this might be beyond the scope of what you're presenting today, but I was kind of intrigued by this concept of light and dark, and I was wondering if you were perhaps attributing that to, or that concept to, I guess, maybe more general terms, or if you were associating, let's say, the more negative or adverse expression of characteristics related to a particular sign, such as that of Aries, based upon, let's say, someone having the sun in Aries in their chart in an adverse or negative aspect, such as a square or opposition to perhaps Mars? Or is it just, as you seem to have addressed, based upon that particular individual's frequency, or their own kind of meter of light and dark?
So I do think it's more the latter of what you said there. I think it's the person's individual vibration, day to day, hour to hour, because even if you have challenging aspects in your chart, that doesn't mean that your energy is always going to come out as the shadow side of that.
Yes.
Even if you have an aspect or a square or something that's, difficult, quote unquote, in your chart, you can still learn to harmonize with that difficult aspect, and you can find the synergy of like finding the best of all of these pieces and bringing them all forward at the same time.
That
Like
makes
you can
sense.
master those elements. So I don't associate difficult aspects with
Yes.
the shadow side.
Yes, that makes sense. And then one last concern I had
Okay.
was, it seems like, I think you addressed and made clear that you were referring to the archetypal, or the considerations or factors related, or characteristics associated with the sign, as opposed to relating them to, like, let's say, a particular planetary placement. So, however, in your description of, when you describe the qualities associated with Aries, it seemed like you were describing someone who may have had the sun in Aries or Mercury in Aries, as opposed to, just the general archetypal associations. Or maybe you were just doing that as an example.
So my intention was to portray more the archetype of
Yeah,
the sign,
I see.
not necessarily the sun. But the sun is an interesting one to bring up because the sun doesn't necessarily have its own attributes. It more magnifies or brings that solar energy to the archetype itself.
Yes.
So I think Aries archetype versus sun in Aries is a lot the same. So that's
Yeah, very similar.
my personal interpretation. But yeah, for sure that if you had like Pluto in Aries is very different than having the sun in Aries. So as you go through like your individual chart, depending on what placements you have in Aries could definitely impact how that Aries energy shows up for you personally.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any other thoughts on Aries before we zoom on to Taurus?
There was just a comment in the
Oh,
chat from Kitty
okay.
Jean. She
Yes.
says that she is also an Aries and not operating on the domineering side of Aries feels so much better, less force required.
Yeah, dude, I honestly don't have like really strong Aries in my chart, but I did grow up with 3 younger brothers, and I feel like I learned by like age 5 that you cannot boss people into doing what you want. Like that just doesn't work. They rebel about instantly. So, yeah, Aries, I feel like it can be really frustrating if you are in that dark side. Like you oftentimes have such grand ideas and probably need collaborators to help you accomplish all of these grand ideas. And if you're operating from that shadow side, it's like impossible to find collaborators that can help you bring those ideas to fruition. Okay, so on to the second zodiac sign. So this is Taurus, and Taurus is I have and is represented by the bull very appropriately. So Taurus is the middle of spring. So because it's the middle of the season, it's the fixed sign. It's also an earth sign. The date's there. And then getting into the gifts. So Taurus is the definition of physical security. Again, this is the light side of that energy. Very stable in their own values. So that means like what they believe about themselves and about the world comes from somewhere deep inside of themselves. It's not something that comes from other people. And so because of that, they have a strong sense of self. They have really strong roots. They tend to be very physically beautiful themselves, and then also really enjoy surrounding themselves with physical beauty and have a definite appetite for luxury. Like they're very sensual beings. So anything that appeals to their five senses. So whether that's candles and a nice smell, or really soft pajamas, or whatever really delightful, sensual experience they can find for themselves. They're really into that. And then as far as like the gifts, I think you can sum all that up as far as like they're nearly impossible to manipulate. So one of the bad raps that Taurus can get is that they are bullheaded, meaning like I see in some of the astrology groups I'm a part of, like, how do you get a Taurus to blah, blah, blah? Like, doesn't even matter how you're going to finish that sentence. Like, the short answer is you don't. You don't get them to do anything. Like, and that really is a gift, you know, like when you think about everybody in this world has their own agenda. Everybody in this world has their own reasons for why they want you to do what they want you to do. And Taurus is one of the most difficult signs to get to do what you want them to do unless they already wanted to do that. So that strength of knowing who they are and what they believe in, it offers great continuity to their vibration. They tend to be, like I said, the definition of security. And because of that, they tend to have an easier time, or on the light side of their energy, have an easier time manifesting wealth, like physical material wealth. And a lot of that is because of the consistency of their vibration, that they know what they believe in, they apply themselves accordingly. That's it. Like, so that's really good. The light side of their energy, those are all beautiful things. The challenges, the shadow side of that Taurus energy is like when you have really, really deep roots, you tend to be stubborn and hard to move and resistant to change. And resistant to change can be good up to a certain point. You know, resistant to change keeps you from doing impulsive things that aren't going to play out well in the long run. And that's a gift. But resistant to change on the shadow side is like staying in a marriage that's not working just because this is where I'm comfortable. It's staying at a job that I really am not cut out for just because this is a paycheck. It's a really nice paycheck. So I'm not going to move on. I'm going to stay here and sell myself out for this good paycheck. So, you know, really it comes down to being a little bit materialistic. They're more concerned with the physical security side of life than the spiritual satisfaction side of life. Again, that's the shadow side. In the light side, they can have all this physical beauty, all of these physical manifestations, and be totally content on the inside. That's totally possible for that Taurus energy. And then the last one on the shadow side is the brick wall, like that classic Taurus, like bullheadedness that they just like won't listen. They can legit close themselves off to, I don't need to hear what you have to say. So again, that can be good up to a certain point, depending on who's talking to you and what they're trying to say to you. But if this is a relationship and you're trying to like have a partnership with someone, you can't be a brick wall. Like you need to have a little bit more give to you than that. So yeah, that's the light and the shadow of Taurus. Any thoughts from the group or questions on that one?
Just this brings to mind Megan Fox. I think she's a Taurus. She's like one of my favorite, you know, physical representations of the essence of Taurus. You know, she's beautiful physically, you know, you know, scientifically speaking. And then at the same time, and this is another quality I've noticed about Taurus individuals. They tend to be the most down to earth, pun intended, because Taurus is an earth sign, and just real, and sometimes even tomboyish. And I see that with Megan Fox, you know, in her interviews. She's very tomboyish, like she likes to get her feet dirty, play with the guys, curse, although she looks, you know, still embodies that beautiful image of, you know, the Venusian Taurus essence. So yeah, that was all.
Awesome.
I mean, I'm a Taurus, so I was just going to say this is, you know, really accurate, that I am very, you better come to me with a very well thought out, I don't want to say argument, but a very well thought out position. If you're coming at me to try and change my position on an issue or whatever, you better come at me with information and or facts to back up your position if you're wanting me to change my mind on an issue or a candidate or any, I mean, I just use that as an example on anything like that. You can't come at me with emotions or, well, I think this might, or whatever. That just won't fly.
Yeah, in its light side, like it's not like Taurus is incapable of change.
Mhm.
It's just going to be a really long, well thought out and well planned methodical process of transition. They will have like they're the kind that they can't quit their job before there's another job lined up. Like I'll have 2 weeks left at this job, and that gives me 2 weeks to start at my next job. And so there's no gap.
There's the planning, and yeah, there's the planning and the research and the everything like that is all thought out. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
yeah.
the exactly the opposite of what we just got done talking about with Aries, where they'll get a little bit of excitement and jump off the cliff and like figure out all the details while they fall to the ground. Taurus is like, I'm not jumping off that cliff until I have exactly my step-by-step plan of how I'm going to land safely at the bottom. So this is where I say we all have all of them. You know, there are the moments where we have the jump off the cliff energy. There are the moments where we dig our heels in and feel our roots grow deeper. And we're like, no, I'm not moving without a sound, logical plan. So it's about seeing those tendencies in yourself in all cases. And then even after narrowing down, like, okay, this is my Taurus energy. Am I acting in the light side of Taurus energy, or am I acting in the shadow side or the detrimental side of that energy? So it's all coming back to self-awareness and trying to understand ourselves better and get more out of life, like live closer to the life that we want to live by optimizing these energies and working with them instead of against ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Really cool. Oh, next is Gemini. I might be biased because my sun and a bunch of other planets are in Gemini, but this is probably my favorite energy. And oh my goodness, they need a little bit of love. Geminis are always out there catching heat in the astrology groups. It's okay. It's okay. We can take it. So Geminis, I think they are the kings and queens of thinking. They're represented by the twins, and I think again very fittingly represented by the twins. They are the end of spring. So Gemini is that last sign in the spring season. So it is the mutable air sign. The gifts of Gemini. So endless curiosity. It's like you ask a question, you learn the answer. All that does is inspire the next question. These are the kids that when they were little, they said, why? And the parent answered. And then they said, why? And then the parent answered. And then they said, why? And the parent answered until they eventually strangled the Gemini child. So that's like endless curiosity, which again, if you think about like the light side of that, like a never ending thirst for knowledge. Because of Geminis, we know more than we would otherwise. We learn deeper because of that Gemini energy. Gemini energy is never satisfied with like, they basically never know enough. And that's one where, you know, on the light side, that can be really great. On the dark side, a Gemini can drive itself insane by never being able to know enough. So again, it's about balancing that energy. The gift of Gemini is also inspired ideas. Like some of the best ideas for a Gemini or for Gemini energy, they pop into your head, and it's like a whole download of like, here's the name of it, here's the how you're going to write about it, here's this graphic that you're going to put with it, here's where you're going to post it. It's like the whole idea is like one giant package that just comes to you. That's Gemini energy. When those ideas download in your mind. Gemini is said to be the messenger of the gods. So this Gemini energy is basically an open channel between infinite intelligence and our verbal abilities. So Mercury is the planet that rules communication and Gemini. Again, Mercury is said to be the messenger of the gods. So when Gemini energy is at its highest frequency, basically the conscious thinking mind relaxes, and the subconscious connected to infinite intelligence mind opens up, and the person is more the vessel of this energy that carries the message of the gods. So with that, Gemini is very sensitive to that energy. And that's where, if you're at all on the dark side of your own vibration, that energy that's coming, it can feel really chaotic. And so that's where Geminis can get that reputation of being erratic or change their mind a bunch. I personally think that that's because they're hooked up to that energy stream, and it's constantly bringing something new for them to think about and react to. Geminis are extremely observant, so not necessarily in the way that water signs are observant, but still very much like reading between the lines and hearing the tone of your voice and seeing your body language and hearing what's not said just as much as what is said, and piecing together a whole narrative of your energy that's not just it's not just about the words that are being said. They hear way more than that as they observe. And that Geminis can think out loud. So that means that like they can be talking out loud and have thoughts that are brand new to them. So they're speaking it before they've even had a chance to like run it through their own mind. And oftentimes that's how they learn. They learn by talking out loud. So like my mom, she, oh, bless her heart, I talk a lot, like as a human being, and she needs a lot of quiet time. And so I'll be over here talking, just trying to figure out like what's what, you know, I just need to say it out loud so I can work through stuff. And she's like, Carly, just stop, like, just stop it. And she's like begging me to quit it. So it's important to, you know, either do that by yourself or find somebody who's into it to help you work through all of those thinking out loud moments. And then on the challenges, the shadow side of Gemini is that they're flaky. That can be a common tag that gets put on them. Emotionally detached, I would put that on the gifts and the shadow side. Again, it can be a superpower to be able to be emotionally detached, to be able to see things from a purely logical, analytical standpoint. But at the same time, again, if you're trying to make a relationship with someone, if you're trying to have a partnership where it's a give and it's a take, to be emotionally detached doesn't usually work. So that can be really frustrating in like an interpersonal sense. Restlessness, just a general, like I said, like they can't ever know enough. Like there's never enough interaction. There's never enough mental stimulation. So if you're not really feeding that energy and giving it room to run, that restless energy, it can turn into like partying and addiction to substances and all kinds of things that you could reach for to try to fill up that restless energy. They change really, really fast. And because of that, sometimes get labeled as two-faced. like the Gemini said something and then later said something completely different. Usually it's not malicious. Like usually they just genuinely change their personality between then and then, or better said, they probably have about 8 million personalities all the time. And you happen to see this one day and you happen to see the other one the other day. And, you know, like just to let that be possible, that somebody might be operating on more than one frequency day to day. And then as far as like the last bit of the shadow side, I would say in shadow, they can be real needy for external validation. And I, again, am lumping myself into that category. It's, as a Gemini, you're always looking to see how you're being received and wanting to measure how satisfied you are with what you've just said by how it landed with the audience. And if it didn't land with the audience, here, how do I sing and dance a little better so that I'll get a better reaction out of them? So you're in shadow, if your cup's not full and you're coming at it from an insecure place, you can completely get off track trying to perform for the sake of that external validation.
Well, you know I have a comment, and you didn't even ask yet. Well, I do have the Sun and Mercury in Gemini. And it's interesting. I recall being 8, so I would just have to confer with you regarding that, just all the things you listed about their gifts, the light side. So regarding the endless curiosity point you made, I recall being 8 years old and hearing the word DNA, or the acronym, you know, DNA. And I remember kids were using it, and I was like, okay, but what does that mean? And none of them could tell me, or what did that acronym stand for. And so I remember going and finding a dictionary and looking up, and obviously learning that it meant deoxyribonucleic acid. And so from that point on, I became obsessed with dictionaries at 8 years old. I recall learning a great deal of vocabulary terms and words. I even would take all of my spelling books home, and words are obviously important to a great deal of Geminis. Um, and then in terms of being a lifelong learner, I would always like go to libraries or read. I would even skip school because I just thought it was dumb, along with most of the teachers and all of the students. And I would just go to the library and just read all of the subjects of philosophy and mythology and astrology. So even at that age, and everything that I ever wanted to learn about as a kid, especially hypnosis. And then I did want to say, so you touched on how, you know, sometimes people perceive Geminis as having, you know, as being two-faced, or having multiple personality, or having, you know, being reminiscent of the fictitious tale of Dr. Jekyll and what is it, Dr. Hyde, and you know what I'm talking about, right? Dr. Jekyll and
Dr.
Mr.
Jekyll,
Hyde.
Mr. Hyde.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But the reality is that we don't just have two personalities, we have a million. And, you know, and I think it's important to consider that Gemini is hermaphroditic in nature. You know, it's associated with the hermaphrodite, or being of two genders. And so I feel like that's why we see a lot of Geminis in the media, like Prince, you know, for instance, who has a seemingly questionable, you know, sexual orientation. And I'm guilty of that too. A lot of people, and like Prince, I have the sun and in Gemini and the moon in Pisces, just like Prince and Kanye West and so on. And but I think the most balanced Geminis, it's not that we're we're not bipolar. It's just that we are impartial in perspective, and we understand most things, and we appreciate most things and their opposites. You know what I mean? And so, all right, well, I've talked enough, so I'm gonna leave it there. But I could go on and on and on and on and on, obviously. But I did want to make one last point with regard to the shadow side, the external validation. I feel like, I mean, it differs for different Geminis, and I think that depends on, you know, their house placements in their chart. Like my sun and my Mercury are in the 12th house, you know, which is the house of solitude and seclusion. And so I don't need to seek external validation from anyone on this planet, because no one can offer that to me. Not a human. I seek my validation from, you know, my higher source, or what I call the universal energetic source. So yeah, but I think that's something you'll touch on later when you get to that series. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that for now.
You need your own event series. That's what you need, is your own little.
Actually, no, I had a podcast. I've been doing studying astrology and interviewing celebrity psychics and best-selling authors who write like spiritual books for like forever. So I'm not a beginner, I admit, but it is fun to like just kind of join in and see how what everyone else is into.
Indeed. Okay, so we will move on to Cancer. And Cancer is, I feel, and represented by the crab. So the crab is exactly how I think of Cancers. Like, they can appear really solid and strong on the outside, but then they're like a little cupcake on the inside. And that's important to remember because, like, my mom is probably the closest example of this, where on the outside she seems totally like put together, and then, you know, on the inside she could have a million different things going on, and she's so good at just like closing up her shell, and then nobody gets to see that. So Cancer is the cardinal water sign, so the start of summer. The gifts of Cancer is that they are like one of the best listeners. When you sit down with a Cancer, expect to be heard and remembered. And that's probably true whether they're on the light side or the dark side. They have a great deal of intuition. So that's like one of their best gifts. I would say that's probably also what drags them into their shadow side at times. Is that they are very, very open to feeling the energy around them. And because of that, when they are in their highest frequency, they're able to use all of that intuition to help them with their decision making. So because of that, they tend to go with their own flow. And Cancer is actually known as the divine mother energy. So one of the most nurturing signs of the zodiac. Very dependable and loyal, and at their highest frequency, they basically require a harmonious home environment. So, which is great if you're living with a Cancer in its highest frequency, because now you get to benefit from the harmonious home environment. So that is like one of the best gifts that the Cancer offers to its family. Typically, is that the people who live in that same house are going to benefit from the need for emotional harmony between everyone. And so generally that means like sensing out when there's disharmony and figuring out how to nurture the family unit back into harmony. So all of that is an intuitive process for the Cancer. Challenges in the shadow side. So because they're so concerned with nurturing and restoring harmony, they can be slow to want to voice distress or criticism or anything like that. And so because they are not being direct with that kind of feedback, they're more bottling it up. Those kinds of hurts and tensions can turn passive aggressive and ultimately stretch out how long are we going to be living in this, you know, whatever tense back and forth we're going through at the moment. They can be disappointed by others when others are not as emotionally available as they are. Like Cancers are so nurturing and intuitive about the other person's needs. And so in their shadow side, especially when their cup is empty, they can expect others to care for them the way that the Cancer is caring for the others. And so if they're not getting back the exceptional care that they're giving out, they have a tendency to be disappointed and to blame it on the other person for not being as caring as they should be, when really the Cancer at that point is meant to like take care of itself, to not prioritize nurturing others, but turn that magic around on themselves, which is kind of what I mean by enmeshment. So enmeshment being the opposite of independence, where they can't be happy unless their partner is happy. So at that point, you have entangled your own well-being with somebody else's, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just makes it a lot more complicated to get yourself on stable footing to where your happiness is consistent. And in general, I mean, this is probably on the light side too, but they are so sensitive to emotional energy that it's easy to get overwhelmed in that, especially if they're tired or if they go into big groups and aren't fully aware of just how sensitive they are to the fact that they're going to be picking up that energy. So, you know, probably like the best work environment if you have heavy Cancer energy is to not be around like big crowds of people very often, because after you pick that energy up, then you go home and like then you just have that energy, and now it's for you to move that energy and get it out of yourself. But if that's a lot to maintain on a regular basis. If you're going to go out and like pick up a ton of energy every single day, you almost need a full-time job just to process and move that energy back out of yourself. So probably more like one-on-one or in a smaller group environment, or staying at home and being more of a homemaker, or working with your own kids, or that kind of thing. So any questions on Cancer before we move on?
I have one.
Yeah.
It's Monica. So
Hi.
I missed the first part of this. I apologize. Are we specifically talking about sun signs?
No.
Okay. Because this is my rising sign, and I feel like, I'm sorry, my ascending, and I feel like you just described me to a T.
So this is the 12 zodiac archetypes, meaning we all have all 12 of them. And depending on what placements you have in each energy is going to change a little bit how that energy shows up for you. But yeah, if your rising sign is in one of these signs, if your sun is in one of these signs, or your moon, chances are the sign itself is really going to resonate with you. But that being said, even if it's not your sun, your moon, or your rising sign, if you had a few other planets in Cancer, for example, Cancer might still really resonate with you, even though it's not one of your main energies, like planet-wise. So we all have all 12. That's the gist of this this presentation, is to try to see all 12 energies in yourself. Like, I think, you know, if you get general enough with each energy, chances are you're going to recognize bits of yourself in all of them.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Valerie. I missed your message.
Valerie, were there other questions there?
No, not in the chat right now. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a funny story. So when I went to find graphics for this presentation, I wrote all the content, but the backgrounds I did get from an artist on Pixabay, and she had this beautiful collection of images for every single sign except for Leo. And so Leo got its own image, which after I had decided to like, screw it, I'm just gonna go with it, and Leo will just have to be its own unique thing. I was like, how fitting that Leo will get to be its own unique thing, because that's very, very appropriate for the Leo sign. So Leo is I create and is the lion. It's the middle of summer, so it's the fixed fire sign. And the gifts of Leo, so Leo's ruled by the sun. So the sun and Leo have a lot in common, starting with the fact that in its lightest, highest frequency, it is literally warm like sunshine. Like, you be around a Leo and you can feel their warmth coming out of them and warming your heart. You can literally feel it, even over Zoom. Leos are natural born fun leaders, very optimistic and ambitious, almost like emotionally called to express themselves. Like, it's not optional. They have to express themselves. That's one of those energies that if you're not allowing it to flow, if you're bottling it up at all, it can push you into the shadow side of that Leo energy. And then kind of the same thing with self-love. So Leos adore attention. And in the shadow side, like, they really need and crave that validation. But in the light side of Leo energy, the Leo figures out that the only source of real love comes from inside of you. So the more you love yourself, the more lovable you are to the outside world. I'm able to say this story. I'm working on living it currently myself. In its shadow form, Leo energy is easily disappointed by reality because they're so optimistic and so ambitious and so creative and imaginative inside their own mind that they tend to come up with these elaborate fantasies. And then when reality falls short, it's like, well, shit, come on, like just generally disappointed. And so that can be an adjustment. Typically, as you get older, you learn like, okay, well, that was fun. I got to learn from that. Here's what I'm going to try and do better next time. And you take it a lot easier, take it a lot less personally. Leos can be overbearing, again, kind of because they can be a little bit needy for attention. You think about if the gift of the sign is to warm others like their sunshine, really they need others around to feel like that cycle is being completed. So if they're on the shadow side and others aren't gravitating to them naturally, like they do on the light side, Leos can go out and start throwing tantrums or doing whatever else they need to do to become the center of attention and get that attention that they're seeking. So because of that, can be a little bit overly dramatic. That dramatic one though, like you see a lot of performers, like musicians and actors and all kinds of creative artists who use that ability to dramatize their emotions, and they get paid for it. So that could be a gift on the light side, just as easily as it can be on the dark side. It's more like when those dramatic moments are becoming disruptive, like if they're happening at work in a board meeting and you're slamming your hands on the desk and storming out, like that's veered into the shadow side of drama. And because of that, like they can have somewhat of an explosive temper, again, for the same reason of like, if you're not allowing that self-expression energy to flow, if you're not getting the attention that you need, if you're not making sure that your Leo energy is getting what it needs in terms of being shown to the world and getting to warm the world like sunshine, it's easy to start to feel like that energy is backed up and that eventually that's going to have to find a place to go. And Leo is a fire sign. So that means at some point it is going to come out in a fiery burst. So that's, and the last one is codependency, just because, again, their cycle, their gifts very much they rely on another person being present in terms of wanting to warm like sunshine. You need someone in front of you to warm. So if there's somebody that really loves you in a special way and like they love your Leo energy and they let you flow their energy or flow your energy all over them, you can, like the Leo can become addicted to that person and now be making decisions just to keep that person around versus being authentic to themselves. So that's what I got on Leo. Anybody have a question? I saw the chat go off a couple times on that one. Is it anything that needs forward?
That was me.
Okay. You're doing it.
Singing your praises, but no, I did not see any questions in the chat about Leo.
Cool. I'm not even looking at the chat, so it's all you. Okay. So Virgo is I analyze and the goddess. So there's a few different, as far as the symbolism for Virgo, it's like the virgin and the goddess, and there's a couple, the maiden, there's a couple different ones. But it is the end of summer, so the mutable earth sign. The gifts of Virgo, they are very task oriented, and in their light side, excellent at follow through. So you think about like Aries, for example, where they're just so excited and they get a new idea and they're passionate and they jump off the cliff and that's so exciting. Let's hope that they're paired up with a Virgo so that the Virgo can actually like make sure that we get the task list all together and let's finish all the work associated with the project and we'll be successful in the end because we actually finished the project. So in that sense, this is where we start to see like, really it takes all the signs. Like no one sign by itself is really able to like make something that's truly going to move the world. Like I genuinely believe that connection between people and like leveraging the different talents of different people is really how we shine the brightest. So Virgos, I mean, they have a very serious role to play in keeping the team successful, because they're the ones with the follow through. They're the ones with the checklist, making sure every single T is crossed, every single I is dotted. They are highly resourceful, and that is because they are keeping track of all of these details and then matching it up with, okay, what do we need to do? And what are the resources that we have available to get that done? Very organized and precise. Virgo is a beautiful energy in that they're doing all of this because they are living to serve. They are very, very, very service oriented. And because of that, they're very reliable people. Again, great ones to have on your team. Because even though they're a mutable sign, they are extremely consistent in, if they said they were going to do something, they're going to do it. They tend to be very routine oriented and in that sense predictable. For them, mutable is more about like on the team, for example, they're able to sense, what is happening on the team, what work does need to be completed, who is getting behind on their part of it, and how do I pick up the slack. So they're assessing the situation and they're adapting to make sure that all the slack that needs picked up is picked up. The shadow side of Virgo is that all of that excellent follow through and organization and all of that can turn nitpicky. It can turn perfectionist. Analysis paralysis is very common to Virgos, just meaning that they get stuck in thinking through all of the steps along the way. So the exact opposite of Aries, where they're going to leap even if they have no plan at all. Virgo, it's like they can't leap because they don't have a plan. Like they don't know enough of the steps along the way to trust themselves to be able to leap. And then the last one is overly focused on improvement. Meaning that, it's not bad to be focused on improvement, but when you're hyper focused on this is what we need to improve on versus appreciating how good it already is, that can get counterproductive. And again, in a relationship setting, that can get really annoying for the partner who's like, I'm trying and I am improving. And instead of telling me I'm doing a good job, you're coming back at me with like, okay, and now you need to improve this and this and this and this. So shadow side and light side, like the Virgo skills, just like all the rest of them, are very, very helpful in their light side and can definitely rub people the wrong way in their dark side, but that's true of any sign. Any questions or anything on Virgo before we jump ahead?
I've got something.
Mm-hmm.
So I have almost no Virgo in my chart except for Pluto and Uranus. So that's it. But I definitely have some Virgo tendencies. But I'm Libra with Pisces moon and Cancer rising. And I've always been trying to figure out why I seem to have some of these qualities that are, they're pretty prevalent in my personality. Do you have any idea what other combinations can yield a Virgo type of nature?
Well, I know you say that you have hardly any, but Pluto and Uranus are very powerful planets. So Pluto is like plutonium, like powerful magnifier of whatever energy it's going to be in. So it brings an intensity to that energy in you, whichever sign you have Pluto in. So Pluto in Virgo all by itself, I would say, is going to give you Virgo tendencies. But to have Uranus there as well, again, is just magnifying that energy. So it's possible, some people have like a bunch of planets in 2 or 3 signs, and that's it. And they really resonate with those 2 or 3 signs and not really much at all with the rest of them. That doesn't mean that they don't have it, but it's also possible to have like one planet in like 10 different signs, and then you kind of resonate a little bit with each of them. So it's really about recognizing each energy in yourself, like learn to recognize this is my Virgo. This is like my hyper-focused, hyper-organized, like knowing all the details, having everything under control, being of service to others. And then recognize, like, is this the light side? Is this the productive side of Virgo? Or is this the dark side? Am I holding myself back by spinning my wheels in the dark side of Virgo? Or is this, let that Virgo energy support you, because all this follow through, all this like resourcefulness, which I know a little bit about what you do, like I'm sure that resourcefulness comes into play. The service oriented nature of your work, like, yes, I mean, all of that I think is a huge benefit to providing structure for what you're doing. But then on the shadow side of that, like when you get stuck in analysis paralysis or nitpicking, or like it's not perfect enough yet, and I can't do it, I can't move forward because it's not perfect enough yet. So at that point, like, oh, this is shadow Virgo. Like maybe I just put it down. Maybe I go for a walk. Maybe I give myself a little Leo pep talk of self-love, like whatever you got to do to like, okay, how do I switch out of this Virgo shadow, like being too hard on myself energy?
Yeah, I think my Libra sun keeps me in balance. So I don't think I'm too bad with the challenges, but I'm glad that you pointed out the Pluto amplification of things, because I kind of missed that. I didn't link it for some reason. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pluto's a big one. For sure. Anything else on Virgo?
I would like to make a comment,
Sure.
if I may. Okay, so it's more so a question. If maybe now or at the end, you could go back to Cancer, because I realize that when I'm not on my medicine, I feel more like a Cancer. I feel more like a hard shell, but I feel soft on the inside. As far as when I'm on my medicine, I feel just completely soft. You know, soft. But yeah,
Yeah. Huh.
yeah.
Well, that we can definitely come back to at the end. And then two, I would invite you to show up to one of my Wednesday morning, like free mini reading sessions where I can actually look at your chart and we
Okay,
can look
cool.
at, you know, how many planets do you have in each sign and how are they talking to each other? And maybe that helps us to understand rather than just looking at each individual sign.
All right. I definitely follow. I think somebody posted a link in the chat.
I do believe Valerie's on
And
top
I
of
would
it.
definitely. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's open to
Looking
anybody.
forward
So
to
every
that.
Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Central Time, I do
Okay.
those free mini readings where I'll look at people's actual chart and just give you a few minutes of basically some things to Google. Oh, kind of like this session in those free mini readings. I'm mostly focused on teaching people how to do their own research. I offer paid
Mm-hmm.
readings where I can tell you more depth and detail and all that. But again, you can learn a lot just by Googling the right thing. So I try to teach people like how to do their own research. But so yes.
Cool.
Okay. And yeah, just like I did last time, I've way misused my time here, and we're gonna have to like super speed through these last ones, or we're not gonna get finished. So that's what I'm gonna do. Try to give them their gist here, but. So Libra is I relate, and it's the scales. So the scales is perfect because the lightest side of Libra is demanding of justice and social equality. So you think about people who stand up for other people, like who root for the underdog or who stand up for the person that's being bullied. That's a Libra. And Libra probably can't stand up for themselves to save their lives, but as long as they're speaking on behalf of someone else, like they're right there, strong and ready to defend, this scales of justice. Otherwise, if they're working on their own behalf, they come off as extremely charming and likable. They're very good at building relationships because they're very good at reading people and understanding how to speak eloquently to get their way or have their desired effect. Because of that, they're natural diplomats and very peaceful. The shadow side of that is that they can have an impaired sense of self. I say that because they do tend to be very focused on maintaining harmony with others. And if your biggest priority is to maintain harmony with someone else, then your focus isn't on kind of like the Taurus side of things, where their focus is 100% on what are their core values, has nothing to do with anybody else. So Libra can almost be on that other side of not having a strong set of their own values. They're more like good at having lots of friends and maintaining harmony with others. They can get caught in surface level beauty rather than, you know, inner beauty. They also fall into the perfectionistic vein of things, and then sweeping negativity under the rug. And that's again because they're maintaining harmony and positivity and getting along with others. And so they're minimizing the little things that, you know, aren't worth dealing with in the moment because we're doing the harmonious thing. But those things, they're not going anywhere. They're just bottling up and they're piling up, and eventually we're going to have to deal with it. So that's my very quick run through on Libra. Anybody have anything to add on that one? Anything in the chat, Val? I'm assuming you would tell me if there was. Yeah, good.
Well, so I would like to say, sorry, that my grandmother is a Libra. My grandmother is a Libra, and all of these stand true. And I think Aries and Libra get along well. Yeah, like I always think like if I want to be in a relationship with somebody, it would be my grandmother, and she's a Libra. And I'm just looking at this, and it's amazing how accurate it is. That's all.
Yeah. Well, and Aries and Libra are sister signs, aren't they?
Okay.
Pretty
I'm
sure.
not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Where
I'm new to.
they're exactly across from each other. So whatever signs are always across from each other, those are the sister signs. So Aries and Libra are sister signs, which means they basically have a lot in common, but they'll go at things completely differently. So like in this case, they're both cardinal signs, like meaning they have that get excited, get passionate, leap off the cliff kind of energy. But Libra is more like playing the social side of it, like, here, let me use my enthusiasm to get all these people excited about my cause, and then we'll all go leap off the cliff together. And Aries is like lit up on fire and is leaping off the cliff and then turns around to see, did anybody come with me? So they just like, again, have a I love how funny you think that is. Yeah, they just have a very different way of approaching it. But those sister sign combinations, they're, you know, all of them, there's 6 pairs of signs. All of them have a lot in common. So yeah, if you can stand for somebody to approach life in the almost opposite way that you do, in the end, you'll actually get along really well with the sister sign of your sign. So in your case, Aries and Libra. So, okay, Scorpio is I desire and is represented by the scorpion, kind of like Cancer. Here we have another water sign with a really hard outer shell that is protecting its soft, gooey center. So Scorpio is another one that, man, they can put on a show about being all tough with their claws and their stinger. And yet, oh my goodness, on the inside, biggest cupcakes ever. So on the light side, they have deep emotions. They're very, very open, like the other 2 water signs, very open to the emotional energy around them. And because of that, they are highly intuitive and constantly getting information from their environment, from that energy that they're picking up. Because of that, they are like the investigator of the zodiac. They tend to be very curious, and like no taboo, no dark place is off limits to get to the bottom of the truth. So they're not scared of having to plumb the depths of emotions or the most taboo subjects or the, you know, off the beaten path. They'll walk there just to get to the bottom of the truth. So very investigative. They can be very influential, again, because they're a water sign and they know how to read people, and they're also highly strategic. So not only influential in the moment, but also just in general, like getting people to walk this long-term path of the Scorpio person getting what they want. Like they tend to have a big picture view of this vision that they're trying to enact. And then they know how to get people to come along with them. They're very passionate and energetic and very determined. That's where they can definitely flip into the shadow side really easily, into that obsessive place. that hyper focus, it can serve them really well by like letting them follow through and letting them finish the task that they're on. But if they get into that tired place or an empty cup place, that can turn obsessive. Kind of the same as the influential thing, like from their light side, they influence, and it's a good thing. They're influencing people towards positive ends. On the shadow side, they can be manipulative, like in terms of just getting people to do what they want, again, by reading the energy of that person and then speaking to whatever that is. Like, I don't know if, like when I think of Scorpio shadow side, it's like they are so observant and their stockpiles of all of this investigating and all these little tidbits of information that they've collected, and they just keep it all to themselves. And then in a fight or something, the shadow side of Scorpio is like hurling all of these little things that they've picked up over the last several years that they've never said anything about. And all of a sudden you hurt their feelings. And so here's all this that I know for a fact is going to hurt your feelings. You hurt me, I hurt you. Like, that's the shadow side of Scorpio. That's that little stinger that when they feel threatened, when they feel attacked, they do attack back, and they can land a punch, an emotional gut punch. That's what a Scorpio knows how to do, again, because they're so perceptive to that energy over time. And that's why I put in there calculating. Again, they're very strategic. They have a very long-term view of things. So they're not necessarily gonna go for the immediate kill. They may go for the long, drawn out, greater suffering approach, to really, maximize the pain that they inflict on others. They may really like create an elaborate scheme of how to bring that to fruition. So yeah, like, again, every single one of these energies has a light side and a dark side. The light side can uplift and help others. The dark side can cause damage. That's true in every single zodiac archetype.
And they're across from Taurus, is that?
Yes. So Taurus and Scorpio are both concerned with power. So power on a Scorpio side of things is that emotional connection with other people, and power on the Taurus side of things is the materialistic side, like the wealth, the physical manifestation of that power.
And so they could make a good pair? They'd both kill each other.
It depends on how open-minded you are. These are two fixed signs, as opposed to, Aries and Libra are two cardinal signs, which just as a rule is a more open energy than a fixed sign. So that means that Scorpio, like Taurus, has an internal compass, has their own idea of how the world should be, and Taurus has their idea of how the world should be. And in their most healed, most highest frequency selves, they would be able to allow the other to be what they are and to appreciate them as they are versus trying to control each other. If they were unhealed and they came together and they tried to control each other, yeah, you would have a scorpion fight. Like, it just would be unproductive. But if they're both able to appreciate, these are your gifts, these are my gifts, here's how I approach the world, here's how you approach the world, we're not trying to convince each other of anything, then they're good to go. And yes, they would have a lot in common.
Okay, just checking. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Sagittarius is I understand, and it's the Archer. So this is the end of fall. Valerie dancing. This is the end of fall, so it's a mutable sign. The gifts of Sagittarius is, I always listed my favorite one is the first one, optimistic and limitless. I say limitless because there's never an end to what they can learn. There's never an end to the meaning that they can make out of life. There's always more to explore. There's always new journeys to have. Again, kind of like Gemini, Sagittarius's sister sign, that restless energy can be it's a thing that, like, you have to feed that restless energy, otherwise it will eat you, and that's not productive. So another gift of Sagittarius, they are independent explorers. There's a lot of bravery in that high side or light side of Sagittarius, and their willingness to walk an unknown path, to jump off, you know, into an adventure where nobody's ever done that before. And they're like, great, we'll figure it out as we go. And they have total confidence in their ability to do that, to figure it out as they go. They're very honest and direct. They don't waste a lot of time sugarcoating things. And they're always learning, very much a student of life, and bold in their own truth. So kind of like a couple of the other signs we've mentioned, like Taurus, they know their version of the truth. They have their own internal truth meter. Every single thing that they take in gets run against their own internal truth meter, and either it fits and it gets integrated and their truth expands to allow for that, or it does not fit, and they are going to probably tell you immediately that that does not fit, that that does not make sense. So in their shadow side, I would call them tactless, meaning they just put it out there with zero regard for the person's feelings or how it sounds or the implications of what they're saying, which again, isn't all bad depending on who you're talking to. If you're talking to some random a-hole on the internet, like, it doesn't matter, say what you got to say. But if you're talking to your partner, like, taking a second to make sure that you're presenting your truth with love and you're meaning it from a high frequency loving place, and, you know, make sure that you're doing that versus just to go on in the shadow side. So brutally honest, they can present as know-it-alls or be arrogant in their knowledge and their version of the truth. Because they know everything, they don't need to listen. And basically, in the worst shadow side, they walk around like it's their job to tell people about themselves. Like, here, allow me to please educate you about who you are and according to me. So again, these are all bless their hearts. I think, you know, my bestie is a Sagittarius, and I love these things, these shadow elements of her personality, because I know that if I'm in a moment where I need somebody to pull my head out of my ass, I'm going to be like, hey, Val, here's my situation. And she can be like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like this and this and this. And she wastes no time in telling me how it really is. So again, depending on your energy and what your preferences are, is how rough does the shadow side of each energy, how rough does it feel to you? You know, if you're someone who's more sensitive and needs things packaged in a really caring, compassionate way, Sagittarius probably is like the bane of your existence. If you're somebody that's more on the air side of things and is looking at the logic and the analytics and just tell it to me like it is, just give me the facts, then Sagittarius is great. So it really, even in that, like, so often when you see people who don't like a certain sign, honestly, it says more about the person who's not liking that sign than it does about the sign itself, because we can all get along with anybody, or we can be offended by anybody. It just kind of depends. So, you know, people show up to be a mirror. And I think Sagittarius often is that mirror because they're not scared. They're not scared to tell the truth, even if the truth is going to upset your apple cart. They really are like, well, but it's the truth. Like, that's their master. That's their top priority, is to follow that truth. And so because of that, again, kind of like Gemini, we know more. We know more than we would without Sagittarius energy. Sagittarius, it just constantly expands our knowledge. And we need that. We need that as a society. Any thoughts on Sagittarius before we flip over to Capricorn? Okay. I'm realizing some of these are easier to see than others. Okay, Capricorn. I utilize, and it's the goat, which I just always find hilarious. So it is a cardinal sign as well. It's the start of winter. On the light side, Capricorn is very responsible and measured, very confident. It is actually the divine masculine sign. So it is the sister sign to Cancer. So Cancer is the divine mother, and Capricorn on the other end of that is the divine masculine. So the divine father. It is very creative and determined, very able to not only imagine a project that they would like to do, but then also engineer a plan to get that project done. And then they also have the follow through to see that that project is done to completion. So in terms of getting shit done, Capricorn is right up there at the top of able-bodied energies. That is like a triple threat. It has the ingenuity to start a project. It has the ingenuity to want to make an improvement versus just staying stuck in the status quo. And then it also is resourceful, and it's an earth sign, and it knows how to accomplish things in the physical world. So Capricorn in general is very, very capable of creating things. And that's why one of their gifts is to create an empire of positive impact, is what I'm calling it. I would imagine most Capricorns have some vision of the empire that they're creating. If you have any amount of heavy Capricorn energy in your chart, your empire, whatever you might be calling it, is probably a thing that you think about on a semi-regular basis, and how each individual part of what you're doing is fitting into furthering this bigger empire, this bigger, longer picture of what you're actually trying to create. The shadow side, you know, all of these great blessings don't come without some level of consequence, because in order to get themselves to accomplish all of that, they basically can whip themselves, like be their own toughest critic, force themselves to work harder, work harder, work harder. Like my dad has a lot of Capricorn and Virgo in his chart, and he used to say that he worked half days, and his idea of a half day is a 12-hour day. That's very Capricorn, if ever I did, if ever I did hear it. Very unhappy without achievement. Like if they don't have physical things to point to, like this is my degree, this is my business, this is my, this, like these physical things are how I see that I'm successful. So that's, again, I put that on the shadow side because I personally feel like the only true success is being happy and at peace within yourself. And Capricorn has this drive to constantly be creating more, and to do more, and to work harder, to have a greater impact. So yeah, they can definitely push themselves to a place where life isn't very much fun. And that overly serious about life, and emotionally shielded. I don't say emotionally detached, like an air sign. They are very much attached to their emotions, but you aren't seeing it. You're not allowed. That is not for public consumption. Crying happens in private. Any type of emotional outburst happens in private. It's like the opposite of a fire sign, where they'll go full on meltdown in front of an audience and they don't give a shit about who sees it, because I'm having a moment. Capricorn is like, on the outside, is that all? And then they go behind closed doors, they're like, ah, lose their shit. So very controlled, very stoic on the outside, no matter what is going on the inside. So they can be really hard to read, and really hard for, you know, like I mentioned, like Cancer, for example. Part of their shadow side is to be unhappy when others are emotionally unavailable. Capricorn is like the epitome of emotionally unavailable, because they don't really normally let you in to what those emotions are. Their tendency is to say, this is my own shit. I'll see you in a few days once I've figured it out, and just walk away. They don't need you to help them with it. They don't want you to even know what it is. It's not your problem. It's not your fault. I'll see you in a few days when I feel better. Exit, and then they're just off doing what they do to make themselves feel better. Yeah, so that's Capricorn. Any thoughts on that before we jump on to Aquarius? Okay. Aquarius is I know, and it is the water bearer. So this is probably one of the most confused signs, because it's the water bearer, but it's an air sign. And so I'm going to try to do justice to explaining why that is. It is also a fixed sign because it is the middle of winter. The water bearer, how did they say that? So like back when astrology was conceived of, you had to go to the well to get your water. And while you were at the well and you ran into other people there, you would swap information and you would tell, like, here's what I know, and you would learn stuff and you would teach stuff and you would just share information. And so this Aquarius energy is the water bearer. Like they would go, like even just metaphorically, go to the well and get all of this stuff. And then what they're transporting the water in is the Aquarius. Like the Aquarius itself becomes the vessel for knowledge. And so that's why I say the gifts of Aquarius is that they are just a vast collection of random information that is constantly evolving, constantly growing. And the more, it's kind of same as any other air sign, the more they learn, the more they need to know. So it's just like falling down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. Aquarius is very thoughtful. They're the kind of people that, like you mentioned, oh, it'd be really nice if, you know, when I was laying in bed and I wanted to journal, if I had one of those little things that you could put on your lap so I could like journal and it'd be easier. And then 2 weeks later, like they're walking up with like, here's this lap desk that you mentioned in passing 2 weeks ago. Like that's Aquarius. Like take in these tiny little tidbits and then provide like physical, tangible ways of making life easier on other people. They're very innovative, like very allergic to the status quo. They like to make up their own rules and invent their own personality aside from anything that society would be expecting from them. So often they tend to be pioneers ahead of their time. And, you know, that can be sad. It can be really beautiful when you look at what they're able to create while they're standing alone from the crowd. They tend to be loners and then be observing. So they're standing on the outside, observing the dynamics of the crowd and coming to new conclusions and asking new questions and wanting to figure out how do we improve life for everyone. And they do that by observing and learning and coming up with those ideas, which requires a lot of solitude for them. The shadow side is, I mean, they're an air sign, and basically all the air signs can be accused of being emotionally detached and or shielded. And in this case, I do mean both, because when an Aquarius is in their emotions, typically they'll be shielded. Like they're not going to put them right out there on display. They're an air sign. But also a lot of times, like they could literally be detached from their emotions, meaning they are purely in their logic and their intellect. And like kind of like Sagittarius, they tend to be very straightforward and direct and blunt. They don't really mean it like that. It's more like, here's the facts. Like Aquarius, especially Aquarius Mercury, like they don't speak unless they have something to add, that they have something valuable to say. They keep everything else to themselves. So that can be difficult depending on, you know, again, who is this that you're trying to work with? Is it somebody, some random person that you know, or is it your partner? Especially if you're someone who likes to talk through feelings and likes to process those feeling moments with your partner. Aquarius is going to have a hard time doing that depending on what the other placements are in their chart. They can be extremely self-critical, just have very high standards of themselves. And a lot of that comes from, they're very aware of like what they don't know yet. Like they're so good at learning. And so therefore they're really aware that like they don't know everything. They tend to feel really inferior, which is just fascinating because they tend to be some of the most knowledgeable people around. But because they're so open, they realize, well, I don't even know like 1% of 1% of all there is to know. So then they wind up feeling like totally inadequate. So, you know, it's a cycle. They can be resistant to communication. So again, kind of that loner status of just like, if they have something going on within themselves, chances are they're going to isolate and deal with it inside of themselves. They're not going to bring it to someone and like want to talk it out. And because of that, they can lack ability to collaborate with others. You know, depending on who those others are. Some people might really enjoy an Aquarius style collaboration where we're not in constant contact. We mostly do our own thing and then we come together once in a while to swap ideas. But again, if you're somebody that's wanting like daily communication and lots of back and forth and lots of different dynamic conversations where we're sharing our thoughts with each other, Aquarius just doesn't really roll like that. So depending on who you're trying to collaborate with, that can either work really well or be kind of frustrating. Yeah, Misha.
So I just found out that my ascending sign is Aquarius, and this explains a whole lot. Yeah,
Oh,
it's explains a lot. So find that with the Taurus and the Leo moon. Yeah, explains a lot.
And that's fixed.
Mm-hmm.
That explains a lot all by itself, is that your big three are all in fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's good to be able to see that we are so dynamic energetically. And even within each energy, there is the shadow side, there is the light side, and you can move along that spectrum day to day. It just kind of depends on what's going on in your life. So, you know, as I look at each of these, especially Leo, because that's where my moon is, like I recognize the shadow side of Leo more from when I was younger. Like when I was younger, I feel like I was constantly in the shadow side of Leo. Like I just couldn't get enough attention, which is great. But as I've grown and as I've worked on myself and I've worked on my own self-love and I've raised my overall vibration, I feel like I'm more often in the light side and popping into the shadow side every once in a while. And learning about astrology and learning about each of these energies, I can realize, like, I can recognize when I am dipping into the shadow side of whatever energy I'm working with. And a lot of that is just, it doesn't feel good. It feels like shit when you're on the shadow side of the energy. So, you know, that's a good indicator that really doesn't even matter what sign you're in at that point. If it doesn't feel good, it's probably not productive to spin your wheels in that spot.
Yeah. So yeah, this is pretty fascinating.
I'm glad that explains some stuff.
Yes, it definitely does. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Last sign, we are on the home stretch. So last sign, the 12th sign of the zodiac is Pisces. And Pisces is, I believe, and signified by the two fish. Actually, they are koi fish. There's a whole story behind that. I think most of these have really cool stories. If you want to read more about why is Pisces the two fish, like there's a whole mythology behind all of that. It is the end of winter, so it's the mutable water sign. The gifts of Pisces is that they are full of imagination. Like there's almost an ability to live with one foot in the physical realm and one foot in the non-physical realm, in the realm of the unseen, of energy and the unconscious and non-physical and spirit. And they're kind of just living between these two worlds. And so in their light side, in their highest frequency of that energy, it's like they can bring all of this beauty of non-physical into the physical. It's possible, like they become a conduit for allowing that energy to flow into the physical, and they become true expressions of Source's unconditional love. That is like the highest form of what Pisces is capable of. Which is endless compassion and wisdom. And that's what I would define unconditional love as. They are the sister sign to Virgo. So they are also very service oriented, very selfless when it comes to their energy. They're givers. They want to make sure that everyone else around them is taken care of. And so day to day, they tend to add a lot of value to anybody that comes into contact with them. So if you work with a Pisces, if you're married to one, if it's your parent, if it's your kid, Pisces like to be of service to other people. That's just part of how that energy works. They're very gentle, like the exact opposite of a Sagittarius. Like a Pisces couldn't hurt somebody's feelings if their life depended on it, where Sagittarius is like unaware of the emotional impact of what they're saying. Pisces like can't get away from the emotional impact of what they're saying. And if they feel like the emotional impact is going to be negative, they'll hold something to themselves versus saying it out loud because they don't want to cause a negative impact to anyone. And they're artistic and intuitive. A lot of that has to do with having one foot in each world. Like a lot of that artistic talent and inspiration and intuition that's coming to them is coming out of that non-physical world and passing through them and coming out as some like painting or short story or poem or something like that that they're able to create in the physical. That's basically just a channeled expression of that non-physical energy. So on the shadow side, part of what can drag a Pisces into the shadow side is their sense of wanting to be of service. They get so hung up on being of service that they forget to take care of themselves. So they can run themselves out and empty their cup. They're such givers that anything that they have, they'll just give it to other people. And it's like, you can do that for a little while, but eventually your cup is empty. And now I don't even have enough gas in my car to go home or to go to the gas station and fill up with more gas. I gave it all away. And now what am I going to do? I'm stuck here. So that is something that, that sense of personal boundaries. And yes, give while it feels good. Give while you're giving away the excess, the overflow out of your cup, but don't give what's in your cup. You have to have enough gas to get home, like that kind of thing. They also, like the other water signs, they can soak up the energy of others without even knowing that they're doing it. So a lot of people identify as an empath. I personally think that we all are empaths to a certain degree because we all have all three of these water signs somewhere in us. And it's mostly a matter of like, how open is your receptor? Like if you have heavy Pisces, Cancer energy in your chart, your receptor is wide open and you're taking in all of that energy. If you have very little of those two energies in your chart, maybe your receptor is only open this far and you barely notice the energy around you. Maybe if it's really intense, you might notice it, but it kind of depends on how heavy those energies are in your chart. But I believe that we all have the ability to soak up energy. Pisces is one though that their receptor is wide open. So kind of like what we said about Cancer, like if you're not careful, you're picking up all of this energy that now you need to go process it. You need to move it or get it to go somewhere or journal it or work out and move it that way, move it physically. And if you're not doing that, then it's stagnating inside of you and festering, and that's not good either. A lot of times Pisces will say like, I don't know what it is, but people just come up to me and start telling me their life story or tell me their troubles or tell me what they're struggling with. And I think that is because they tend to be so receptive to energy, and people are able to like, oh, here, let me vent all of this frustration and discomfort that I'm having. And the Pisces just listens and soaks it up. And then the other person walks away and they're like, man, I feel great. And the Pisces is like, I don't. I feel like I just soaked up all this nasty energy. And now what am I supposed to do? Well, now you got to go deal with it. You got to transmute it into positivity, which takes a second, or stop soaking up the negative energy. And that's where boundaries comes into it. And so if you do that long enough, Pisces can develop like a martyr / victim mentality where they feel powerless and disempowered, where their receptor is so open. So if you go out around other people at all, they feel those other people's energy and they feel this need to be of service to those other people. So if they're in that space of like feeling like a victim to that, the best bet at that point is solitude and filling your own cup back up. Get away from other people, because Pisces often can't help but want to be of service if they're around others. So a lot of times, like, you really do have to isolate yourself until your energy is able to come back in balance. And Pisces is another one where, if you spend enough time in shadow, like, they can become reality avoidant or escapist. So again, substance abuse comes into it, or any kind of, abuse of any, there's like sex addicts and all kinds of different things that you can use to try to numb out these uncomfortable feelings that are just a result of the energy that you picked up that you didn't move, and now you're carrying it around and you feel uncomfortable. So yeah, that's Pisces and Cancer. I would say, like, it's so important to make sure that you're processing and releasing any of that energy that you're collecting on a daily basis. You collect it on a daily basis, so you probably need to be releasing it and like moving that energy on a daily basis. Not to like give you homework, but I think you feel a lot better. That's for sure. So that is, yeah, that's the end of my spiel. I am gonna pull that out just a little bit and just mention that, so tomorrow morning is the group chart reading. So I do mini readings where I'll look at your specific natal chart and we can talk about anything you want for 5 or 10 minutes. And then I also offer one-on-one readings. So if you're wanting to dig deeper into your specific natal chart, I do a 90-minute reading, a 30-minute reading. All of that is on my website. Yep, Val just put the link there. And Miss Val and I, we run 2 different meetup groups, Soul Aligned Living and Everyday Hustle. And so those are full of different events on all kinds of different subjects. So lots of them are free. I would say most of them are free. And even the ones that aren't typically are like $6, $20, something like that. So yeah, check out any of those events that seem interesting. And yeah, as far as the reading tomorrow, the free mini reading, just make sure that I have your chart details ahead of time. So as long as I have those before the session starts, I can do your reading in the session. Any last thoughts before we wrap this up? Sorry I went over time. I did want to get
Carly?
through all.
Do you have a question?
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
Um,
was gonna say, do you do synastry readings between 2 people?
Mhm.
I might need to come back.
Cool. Yeah, so
Okay.
for anybody that doesn't know, a synastry chart just takes 2 different people's natal charts and puts them into one chart so you can see how the charts combine. Like basically, you know, our individual natal chart is a reflection of our energy. And when we get together, when we couple with another person, the synastry chart is kind of like the chart of the relationship. Like, how do our energies combine? Because when you spend a lot of time with somebody, their chart is lighting up your chart or pushing your buttons or bringing out the best in you or whatever the case is. And a lot of that can be seen in the synastry chart.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
and you
Is
have
there
a-
another question?
Yeah, you have a question from the chat from Cecilia, and it says, how can I submit a sidereal chart? Think I'm saying that?
Yeah. If you want to email it to me, I don't pull sidereal charts, but I do read them. So if you have a chart that you like, you can email that to me at carlywharton@gmail.com. Val, maybe you can put that in the chat. And yeah, reading the chart once you have it pulled is very simple. Sidereal charts have all kinds of different options that you have to select from. So I haven't really ventured into learning how to generate those myself, but if you have one that you like, I could definitely read it for you. Any other questions? My dogs are scratching to get in here. Let us in. Looks good. Well, thank you guys so much. Darlene, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say thank you.
Oh, thank you guys. This was wonderful. I love these Astro Beginner events and getting to see some new faces and some people who were here last time. So super exciting. And I hope you got something out of it. I also am really open to feedback. So like this is only the second one of these Astro Beginner events that I've done, and I have more in the works, and then Astro Intermediate is coming at some point. So if you have any feedback as far as like how the session is structured or ways that I could, you know, help the audience get more out of it, I am all ears as far as that's concerned.
Well, I love when you run the same class more than once because there's so many dates I just can't do it, and I'd love to do it. So, yeah, if you and you've been great at that so far, so keep that nice
Cool.
thing going.
Well, and I recorded this one, and so my goal is to put that recording probably on my Facebook page, maybe start a YouTube channel. And that way the recordings, especially of these kinds of sessions, that way they're available after the fact. And if you missed the session, then you can just watch the recording because there's not a ton of interaction at these ones anyway.
Okay, great.
So that's what I'm hoping to do with this recorded version. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Carly.
Anything else? Okay, thanks guys. Thank you so much. I hope to see you all again very soon. Have a great rest of your night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you for being here. Yeah, goodbye. Oh.